Oh my God. Hey everybody, it's Ugly Handsome. I'm finally getting to my Avengers Endgame reaction. Wow. I do have to say I'm a little befuddled by the negativity coming out towards this movie. Not necessarily a lot, but it seems weird. There's a lot of channels that I really like, and people are like, "Oh, I hated this and this," and I'm like, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. There was really only one thing that I had in my mind that was like, if this occurs, I'm going to be extraordinarily upset, and that is if Captain Marvel flew in and one-punched Thanos into death and won the day. I would literally have walked out of the theater if that would have happened. But spoilers, obviously, I'm going to be talking about the entire movie, what I can remember, mostly just things that I really loved, and maybe some things that I would have changed. I mean, I don't believe there is a such thing as an absolutely perfect movie. It is impossible for human beings to be perfect. We can't be perfect. We can't make things perfect. So there's always going to be something. But overall, I mean, there rarely were there times in the film that took me out of the film or made me go, or cringe or anything. I mean, mostly it was me freaking out and cheering loudly and crying a lot. I mean, everything was so cool. It was just like, you know, you got everybody running around and people go and like doing the thing with the like the I don't have a hammer, and you know, with the stuff and the punching and like shield stuff, and you know, with guns. Were there guns? I think there were some guns in there, but you know, and yeah. So, and Thanos was big thing, not thing. I mean, a weapon, and yeah. I mean, it was just so cool. It was just incredibly cool. And as soon as it opens, I see Hawkeye and his family. I'm like, nope, no, this is. It was a fantastic opening because it's super dark, and it's basically just a callback, just saying, in case you didn't see Avengers Infinity War, this is what happens. We get to Tony in space doing that just gut-wrenchingly sad recording into his helmet for Pepper, and how emaciated Robert Downey Jr. Got for that. I'm sure it was probably augmented in some way, a little bit here and there, but man, that was a really cool touch, because he could have just gotten away with it. He could have gotten away with just being how he regularly looked and just saying, "Oh, we're running out of food and running out," but no, I think he really went for it, and you could really tell once they get saved, and by they I mean it's Tony Stark and it's Nebula. Nebula. I'm sorry, I have an unnatural attraction to Nebula. Anyway, so then he does his recording, and basically goes to sleep. And a really great scene with Nebula coming over, and she puts him in the chair, and she's got her hand on his shoulder, and I was just like, oh my God. And I love Nebula so much that I love seeing her being really tender and compassionate, because you can tell with that character, even in other films, the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and that type of thing, you tell she wants to be that. She wants to be good. She wants to be compassionate. She wants to let those things out. But having Thanos as your father sucks. So you've got to put on a brave face and be tough and that sort of thing. So basically, she puts him in the chair and he closes his eyes, basically for the last time. But then there's shimmering light from outside, and we see that as Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel comes, takes the ship herself, carries it back to Earth, drops it off, meets Cap, meets Black Widow, meets, I believe, War Machine, and have a great exchange where she's kind of like, hey, let's go get this jerk, and they're like, it's not that easy. And she's like, yeah, it is, because I'm the best there is. And they're like, look, pal, we're a team here. This is kind of how it works. You might think you're the greatest thing in the world. I'm pretty sure you're not. But at the very least, they all do, you know, get together, and Thor and that type of thing, and they basically go and find Thanos. And you're like, well, how'd they find Thanos? Well, you saw the movie, so I don't really have to explain it. But it was very cool. It was like there was a great energy discharge when he snapped his fingers on Earth, which was registered, and they just found through Nebula helping, they found that another energy discharge was on another planet. But also Nebula knows as well, because when she was younger, he would talk about, oh, once I do this miraculously great thing, I'm going to go and stay in the garden. So they go to this planet. Captain Marvel goes to scout and comes back, and she's like, there's no army, there's nothing, it's just him. He's just hanging out, farming and crap. And so they go and they basically just kick the hell out of him, and he looks awful. Not because they attacked him, but because when what happened was that he no longer has the stones. He used the stones to destroy the stones, so they're gone. There's nothing that can be done. So in a really intense way, it's like he won again. It's like just twisting the knife. He's like, see, it doesn't matter. I did what I did, and I made it so it can't be undone. And he starts monologuing like a villain. He's like, I'm super awesome because I... And then before you know it, his head comes off. Because Thor just... He takes the axe and just chops his freaking head off. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. But there was a part of me that was like, yeah, suck on that, you grimace looking... Anyway, yeah, and then it cuts. It's just a hard cut to 5 years later. You're like, what? You're like, oh my gosh. So they're just kind of in despair. They can't do anything. Yeah, Thanos is dead, but... So for 5 years, Cap is kind of running like a group therapy type of thing for people to kind of cope with what's going on. Black Widow's now sort of in charge, I guess. She's making sure that other characters are kind of going and taking care of things and trying to find ways of helping. So she's delegating and that type of thing. And then it cuts to really kind of the re-beginning of the story, which is the quantum van of Ant-Man, and a rat is inside and on the control panel, and through the sheer will of the universe, this rat's little feet kind of and like press little buttons and shoot Ant-Man out the back, and he gets up and he's like, what the heck? So he's locked in there, and he writes a sign and puts it up at the camera. He's like, help me, get me out of this cage. So he takes all the stuff, shrinking the van and that type of thing. I think he shrunk the van. I think. I could be wrong. But takes all the stuff with a wheelbarrow, and he's walking around. He's trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because he's been trapped in the quantum realm. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He sees all these missing people posters, and then he goes to this kind of mass graveyard with these huge monuments of people that have vanished, and he starts kind of figuring out something, of course, terrible has happened, and so he's like, oh my god. So he starts looking for his daughter. He looks for Cassie. She's like, and he's like, no, please, no, and he looks, and instead of finding her name, he finds his name, and he's like, okay, something needs to be fixed. So of course he goes home, and who answers his door is his older daughter, is Cassie. She's like 5 years older, and it's a tearjerker. Hawkeye, who's no longer Hawkeye, has now become Ronin, which is basically a mass murderer. We see little news flashes of, like, a mass murder here of these mafiosos, these thugs. I believe that Scarlet kind of knows who it is, and she basically asks, I think War Machine, she's like, just try to keep tabs on him and find out where he is or where he's going next. And he's like, you're not going to be able to get him back. You don't want any part of what he's become. And she's like, just please just do it. So she goes, basically finds him, brings him in. His whole family's wiped out, and now he's just raging everywhere. Which I would too. Tony, when he's returned, even though he's dropped off there with Cap and Scarlet and them, he's still kind of anti-Cap at the moment, and kind of blames Cap, where he's like, we needed help, and this happened, and no one was together, and you tore us apart, and it's a really emotional scene. It's hard to explain. A lot of acting, just in general, but also in like superhero movies, sometimes the subject matter of the film can overpower the reality of it, can overpower the emotion of it. And this was such a great moment because it didn't feel like a superhero movie. It just seemed like a drama, like a really serious drama, and it worked out really, really well. So when that happens, they have a falling out basically again. And Tony's like, I don't want any part of this. I'm not going to help you guys do anything. And so they're trying to figure out who to go to. So of course they go to Mark Ruffalo's character. They go to David Banner, who now is Professor Hulk, meaning he says he's always been fighting the Hulk as if he's bad and I'm good and they need to be separated, and he found a way basically to just kind of join the two, and now he's the Hulk, always that size and shape, but has the mind of David Banner, which some people didn't like, and I'm like, what's not to like? That's cool. Because by this time they found Ant-Man. He came right up to the gates and was, at the camera going, hey, remember me? I'm Ant-Man. We met a while back and I shrank and stuff. And so they bring him in, and basically he brings up the idea. He's like, well, okay, Thanos is gone. All this stuff happened, and they fill him in on everything. And he goes, well, I mean, I do have this van, and the quantum realm is weird because time and space is a little strange in there. So basically he's saying, well, and I guess this would be one thing that wasn't bad, but it just reminds me of something that happens in films a lot that kind of drives me nuts, because he starts bringing up this stuff, and they're like, wait a minute, are you talking about time travel? And they start, kind of razzing him about it and everything. And sometimes movies will do that. Movies will have, like superpower movies or Harry Potter films or whatever. And, people are casting spells and levitating and flying and creating dragons. And then somebody's like, well, this place must be haunted. And they're like, you believe in ghosts? And you're like, what? You just cast a bird out of your ass. How is a ghost really surprising or unbelievable at this point? But they do touch on it because Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow, is like, I get texts and emails from a raccoon. Nothing is bizarre. Okay, so, and I loved that because I'm like, finally, somebody is like, just stop, okay? We live in a world where this crap happens, so nothing's out of the ballpark. I'm sorry. You don't get the luxury of saying, that can't happen. But Bruce is like, I don't really know. He's like, we can try to figure it out. We can do it. But in the meantime, because they talked to Tony before and he refused, he's Tony. So of course he sits around and he's like, all right, I'll get with Friday and we'll try to, this is just an experiment. I don't care about anything. I'm just seeing if this will work. It does work out ludicrously fast, but I'm like, hey, it's a 3-hour movie, so they got to get this moving somehow. So I forgave that. It didn't bother me too much. He basically finds a way of navigating through time. So he comes back, they get together, and they basically figure it out. So the plan is basically to go back and get the stones from the different places where they were going to be, because they do bring up, it's like, well, why don't you just go and kill Thanos and, go to baby Thanos and kill him? And Bruce explains it pretty well, where he's like, that's not how it works. You're not really going back in time. You're going to a separate plane of existence. It's a separate timeline. When you go back, you're not really going back to your past. Not really. You're just going to something that looks like your past. So basically what they're saying is you can't do that. So this is what we can do. So they break up in teams, create this big, I guess Hadron Collider type of thing, and go to these different time periods, and it's really very cool. Cap and Tony go back. Cap faces off with himself. The past Cap thinks that this Captain America is actually Loki pretending to be Captain America. But basically they kind of fail. Loki escapes. He gets the Tesseract and vanishes. And so they decide to go farther back during Cap's time, which was also a young Tony Stark's father. So he actually meets his father. He goes back, he gets the Tesseract, he also gets some Pym particles to be able to return and do that sort of thing. And it's an amazing interaction between the two of them. It's so good. Again, it flips not harshly into this very dramatic moment between a father and the son he doesn't know he has yet. And it's done really, really well. Unfortunately, Black Widow and now Ronin, Hawkeye, they go to get the Soul Stone, which they find out, as we all know, one of them has to die in order for one of them to get the Soul Stone. So it's an amazing scene where they're basically fighting each other to be the one to sacrifice themselves. They're stopping each other from, one's trying to run off the cliff and they stop and they wrestle and fight a little bit, and then the other one tries. But basically it ends up being Black Widow. Because basically Hawkeye's got a family, and she knows this, and she sacrificed herself. And it's another just weeping scene that happens. So basically they end up setting it right. They get the stones. Tony creates this Iron Man gauntlet that can grow, expand, or shrink to the size of like a normal person or the Hulk or whatever. And it's decided, the Hulk decides, he's like, look, I'm probably the only one that should wear this and do the snap. And they're like, why? It's like, well, because I'm the Hulk and I basically super regenerate. But also the signature of the glove and the stones and it is mostly gamma radiation, which created him. So, and he has a great line where he's like, it seems that I was basically created for this. So they get the stones put together, he puts the glove on, he snaps, and everybody's back wherever they were before. And he knows this because Ant-Man goes out, he's looking outside, and unfortunately we don't see it. I think they probably should have showed it, but like birds appear, butterflies appear, like half of whatever was gone appears again. Also during this time, unfortunately, Nebula and War Machine go to get the Infinity Stone from Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, and they go to stop Peter Quill at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy when he's dancing around, kicking the little lizards and that sort of thing. As they're trying to get Quill's stone, Thanos is there with the bad Nebula, bad Gamora, and they're talking, and suddenly the bad Gamora kind of freaks out and falls down. There's like a short that happens in her head, and she starts playing this message, but it's a message that was actually recorded by the good Nebula. Somehow, because they kind of exist now in the same place, in the same galaxy, their messages are now almost like an iCloud. They're like synced together. So she's playing a message that was meant for the good Nebula, and Thanos sees it, and Gamora sees it, and they're like, what is this? And the message is that they're talking about the stones, and we're going to get the stone before this happens because Thanos. And so Thanos kind of learns about his future, about what could happen. And at that point I was like, oh no, I was like, oh crap, I never even thought of that happening. So they go down, they capture Nebula, they bring her up, but fortunately through that, the bad Nebula realizes that she becomes good, and Gamora learns that Nebula becomes good and actually wants to be her sister, and that's kind of a turning point for them. So basically this happens. Thanos is like, oh, well, apparently this good Nebula is supposed to go back to this thing, so put on this suit, do this, blah, blah, blah. And she goes back to the Avengers, pretending to be the good Nebula. So while they're putting the stones in the glove and doing the snap, the bad Nebula makes it so that Thanos and the ship and the army and all that thing can come through the quantum realm into that reality, which happens. And that's about the time that, Ant-Man is standing outside. Ooh, look at all the new birds and the butterflies. Isn't this cool? And then the ship appears and, just huge, and just starts bombarding the compound and just destroying it. Hulk ends up holding up most of the stuff, trying to save people. People get out. And this is basically where the big, huge battle happens. They go out, they face off with Thanos, and it's rough. It's mostly Cap that goes out and fights him, and everybody comes out, and Iron Man type of thing, fight, huge battle, and they're starting to lose again, basically, and they're trying to get the glove away, and just what it looks like. I mean, Cap. I figured this was the moment that Cap was probably gonna be dead, because he's getting beat up pretty bad, and even the shield gets cut, kind of shattered in a portion of it gets shattered away, and that's the scene where he kind of gets up and he straightens his thing, and he's like, you know what he's thinking. I can do this all day. And he gets up and he's going back, and just as it looks like it's bad, because by now the armies have come out and those flying weird big huge slug things are coming out, and there's a really cool Doctor Strange portal opened up, and then another portal, and portals, and Black Panther comes out with the tribe, and they come in, and I mean everybody comes in. Guardians of the Galaxy, the Scarlet Witch, I mean everybody comes through, and Scarlet Witch. Oh, the great scene with Scarlet Witch facing off with Thanos, and she has this really dramatic moment where she's like, you took everything from me, and he's like, I don't even know who you are, and she says, you will, and she just hands Thanos his purple ass, just hands it to him, says, here you go, now you know who I am, say my name, Schmack, Scarlet Witch, Schmack. Okay, she doesn't do that, but that would have been really cool if she would have done that, like, what's my name, like that Shaft thing with Samuel L. Jackson. There you go. It's a connection. She could have, shafted him. That was weird. So she faces off with him, and she's basically killing him, and he realizes it. So he's there, and he just says, "Fire on everything, just fire on me, fire on them, fire on her, fire on the whole entire planet," and which basically stops her from doing that. And by this time, he realizes there's a glove, gems in it, and they're trying to get it away. So it goes to Black Panther, and he tries to get it away, and it goes to, I think, Spidey for a bit. And basically it's gotten to Captain Marvel, and she grabs it, and it was kind of a cool scene. It was a strange setup, but it was where Spidey was like, well, how are you going to get past all of these, by yourself? And you hear, oh, she's not by herself. And then you've got, like, the female characters set up behind her, helping her and that type of thing, and so they go and battle, fight, and basically it comes down to Tony and Thanos once again, but as they're fighting, during the fight, Pepper Potts has a Iron Man suit, which some people are like, what? And I was like, that's not what, that's cool, man. That was awesome. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, husband and wife fighting back to back in Iron Man suits, because they're married now, they have a daughter. That was super cool. I'm sorry, but it was cool. But Thanos gets the gauntlet and puts it on, and I'm like, no way, son of a biscuit. And Tony kind of grapples with him, fights with him, and he gets thrown away, and Thanos comes up and he goes, yeah, look what I'm gonna do, mofo. And he snaps his finger and nothing happens. And he turns it over and all the stones are gone. And Tony is back there with another glove, basically an identical glove, with the stones in it. And I don't know if Thanos says it, because before his big line was, I am inevitable. I'm not sure if he says it again. I think what Tony says is, you may be inevitable, or something like that, but I am Iron Man, and snaps his fingers, and Thanos dusts, and the army dusts, and the monsters dust in the wind, and it just, like, they're all just gone. Unfortunately, we go back, thinking in our heads, we're like, oh crap, Banner said that he was really the only one that could do it without super detrimental, and even he's all screwed up, his arm is messed up inside, but this basically ends Tony Stark. That was devastating. It was just like, so it took its toll, but he did get to reunite with Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is being Spider-Man. It's so great because he's like, oh, Mr. Stark, this happened, and then I was kind of gone, and I felt weird, and then I was back again, and Tony is just tearful eyed, and he just hugs the kid. But as Tony is dying, Peter comes up, and he's like, it's all good, everything's great, and we did it, and Pepper comes over and is talking with him, and she has a super dramatic, intensely emotional scene where she just looks at him and basically says, "You can rest now. It's okay. We're gonna be okay." The audience isn't gonna be okay because I wasn't okay because I was weeping. I was not okay with that situation, but it was so dramatically cool, and just that he came such a long way from the first Iron Man to now, where he fully appreciates and understands family and friendship and the things that are important, and basically selflessly just was like, no, I'm gonna do this. It's the right thing to do, and if I die saving everybody, then at least everybody's saved. And he does it, and it's just, it's so good. And there's a funeral for him, and everybody is there, even the young boy who was in, was it Iron Man 2? I think it was Iron Man 2 or Iron Man 3. No, maybe it was Iron Man 3. I can never remember the kid's name, because I'm a fool. But he's there, Hank Pym, and his wife Michelle Pfeiffer, and I mean, just it is very, very cool that everybody's there, and no end credit scene because it's the end. I mean, there were a multitude of cool things that I completely forgot, but I mean, fighting Thor, and everybody's, well, not everybody. I keep saying everybody. That's just glomming together a bunch of people. Many people are upset about what's called the Fat Thor. Because basically you go to New Asgard, and it's small and doing okay. It's kind of like a fishing town. But basically we find Thor. He's got like a big beer belly. He's still muscular, but big beer belly. And he's basically given up. I mean, he's been crushed. He was beaten by Thanos, lost half of the people, and in a way he's kind of given up and not doing so well. I loved that. I mean, it was character. I mean, the idea of people, but why'd he have to be the fat Thor the whole time? Why are you being so shallow? Knock it off. Who cares if he was fat or not? He's still Thor, and he still ends up fighting. So just get out of the shallow end of the pool, come over to the deep end, swim around a little bit. Anyway, that bothered me. I thought it was cool. And he's fighting, basically, and not doing super great against Thanos. He's doing well. But ends up getting hit with the hammer because Cap has caught and picked up Mjolnir. He's got the hammer! And it's so cool because Cap is one of, if not my favorite Avenger of all time. And what's so cool about that, I mean, that's cool in itself. That is praiseworthy, and people were basically standing up and cheering. Me included. And no, it wasn't just me. I don't think. But, fighting, he's got this, and what's cool is that Thor has this reaction where he's like, I knew it! I knew it! Basically saying, I knew you had it in you, because it calls back to Age of Ultron when they're all taking turns trying to pick up the hammer, and Cap grabs it and moves it just a scooch, just a bit, to the point where Thor's like, oh, okay. Very cool. But again, like a multitude of cool things in this. I mean, it's a 3-hour and 2-minute movie, and I've covered, main points, but altogether I've covered maybe 20 minutes. But just overall, I just thought it was great. I really did. I thought it was really, really amazing. Can't wait to see it again. And I'm sure watching it again, I may find things that, again, there are things that I would do differently, or change, or flesh out a little bit, or cut down a little bit, but that's just me being too hypercritical. I think we all have to realize, depending on what the subject matter is, and depending on our emotional investment in it, I think we have to watch ourselves and be like, am I being too hypercritical about this? And why am I being hypercritical about it? Am I being hypercritical for entertainment value for other people? Or am I being hypercritical, because I'm really super upset about this? But I think it's important. I mean, if you want to be hypercritical, but realize why you're doing it. And at least acknowledge it. And that's what I try to do. If I'm being overly critical or hypercritical about something, I'll say it. I'll say, this is hypercritical, this is whatever, but I feel this way. But yeah, again, it's another way of trying to get everybody to be better, trying to better myself, and trying to call myself on my own BS, especially if I'm going to call other people on their BS. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. It was all over the place. I'm all over the place. But loved it, loved it, loved it. I'm Ugly Handsome, and I look forward to seeing all of you later.